any stepfather, especially even do it with little boys, but especially with little girls, you should be cautious, and that fear and sense of dread and concern should come up in you, when you're stepfather. It just should. Don't be stupid. Even to the point
Absolutely.
the first couple of times, and it was weird because when I first got with her mother, I noticed her dad every day would like pick her up from school, bring her home, and shit like that. So you could see the things from the other side of the family, how they're on guard. And I didn't think there was anything wrong with it. I would have did the same thing for my daughter. It's like, hey, they're being a father in the family and protective of their child like they're supposed to. They probably were like, why the fuck you got this black man, blah, 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 blah. But of course, my wife was like, fuck y'all, I'm gonna do what I want, blah, 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 blah. And we were fine. But so I get that. I love all that. What I like, and congratulations to your daughter graduating from college. So we hear all the negatives and the ills about it. Can you tell me after that, can you give these fools some of the positives of being a stepfather or a bonus dad? And salute to you, bonus dad. And I tell them when they like, oh, I'm like, you don't understand. You get a whole nother child. That loves you. And I don't know, do you have other children other than your daughter?
No, I do not.
I don't even call my stepkids my stepkids. I don't use the word step. I don't believe it. I don't. That's just me. Technically it's true, but I'm like, man, fuck y'all. That's my son. That's my daughter. That's just the way I look at it. And they just call me dad or bonus dad. Okay, that works for me. We don't do the step shit because it's sort of like demoting someone, or you know what I'm saying? And I don't do that. Yeah. And I'll tell them I'll die for you just like I'll die for the biological one. And to be honest with you, I have a biological child that I have a more strained relationship than I do with my other sons and daughters, that for all the hell and harshness I took them through raising them too, we have a better relationship. So it really doesn't matter when people sit there and make it seem like blood is the end all to be all. It isn't. But can you tell them how wonderful of a relationship you have with your child, your daughter? Because for all intents and purposes, she may still have another dad. She got two dads. I don't care.
Yeah. No, she and I have a great relationship. Again, I was 22 years old when we met. I was still in college, and I didn't even have a vehicle. I wasn't ready to. I was still living at home, so I wasn't really ready to be a parent, let alone be responsible for a child, right? Or have a girlfriend, wife, child. I wasn't ready for an instant family at that time. But again, I was a goal-oriented person. I was close to graduating from college, and here I meet this young lady who I hit it off with pretty quickly. Me and her mom, and then I meet the daughter, and she's the sweetest she's the sweetest little kid you ever want to meet. Right? Very ambitious, smart, very active. Just a really really good kid. And to this day, she's always been that same person. And I'm lucky. I'm lucky because we've always had a great relationship. She's made me extremely proud in the almost 30 years that we've known each other, and I care for her deeply. And she is my only child, not just my only daughter, but she's my only child. So she's the only opportunity that I have at this point to say that I'm a dad. She's the reason why I call myself a dad.
You are.
Yeah, she's been incredible.
Being a father is not always impregnating a woman. It's a role. Being a father is a role that we take on. And not only have I been a father, and I'm sorry for cutting you off, but I want you to understand, no, I want you to embrace that, because anytime you take on that role, you are fathering a child.
Absolutely.
If you're a coach, and she probably worshiped the ground that you walk on. You are a father, so don't ever diminish yourself in any way. You're her father, she's your daughter, and I'm so fucking proud. Please tell me you're a black man.
I am.
Okay,
Uh,
thank you. Okay, because you know I'm so fucking proud when I hear stories like this because I just don't know how we got to where we got. I understand the caution. I don't
mhm,
like the language about
mhm.
discussing it, and I'm not telling people to run into the shit blindly or recklessly because I will tell a man even if you're going to be a stepfather, that don't mean you need to be a stepfather for everybody. Some you got to find the right family for you.
Yeah, that's right.
What
You
fits
know,
you?
and you know, we have to be careful um, with young children, and I'll say that because you know, young children, you know, if they like you, they can develop really strong feelings for you, you know, in a hurry, and that's what happened in our relationship. You know, my stepdaughter clung to me whenever I came around. My daughter clung to me whenever I was around, and you know, she would be under me, and you know, she would be with me all the time, um, and I knew at that time that if I'm going to be a part of her life, that I've got to commit to it at that point. You know, I've got to be there because I didn't want to ever disappoint her or ever want her to feel like she wasn't. That I didn't want her in my life, right? Because of the bond that we developed in a very short period of time, and that's why you know if you're not ready to make that commitment as a potential father, stepfather, parent, whatever you want to call it, then you know you have to understand who you are and if you'll be able to handle situations like that before you decide to move forward because it can happen really, really quickly. You know, before you know it, you've got a kid, you know, as soon as you walk in the door, kids running and jumping in your lap and, you know, they're hugging you and kissing on you and all this stuff. So you have to, you know, you have to know that you're ready for that. And, you know, I was able to make that leap, you know, and it wasn't really a leap that I was thinking about making at that time. But, you know, I realized the situation that I was in and you know, I said, "Yeah, I'm committed to it," and you know, we've been that way ever since. So, you know, I know that not everybody is mature enough to do that. Not everybody is mature enough to be that type of person. There are a lot of men out there that are, you know, that see a young lady and then they, you know, um, they want to do wild stuff. I'm not that guy. You know, I'm not that guy. Uh, but you have to know who you are in order to know whether or not you can handle a situation like that. One of the challenges that we used to have when my daughter was, you know, in elementary school, middle school, is she was a cheerleader and you know she was on drill team and stuff, and she had a bunch of little friends that want to come to the house. So, you know, I come home and there'd be like 7 or 8 girls running around the house. And, you know, I would see the situation and I would walk outside and I would get in my car and I would leave because because I not that I would ever be tempted, but I didn't want anybody to ever think that there was an opportunity for me to be tempted. You know,
Yep.
the optics weren't good. You know, for me to be there with a bunch of women, the optics weren't good. And I said I had to make the decision that I'm going to separate myself because I don't want any one of their parents to question me as a man and what I'm doing and what I've done. And I also know stories of men who've been accused of things that they didn't do, you
Right.
know, just because the kid was, you know, skillful enough to be able to lie. And so I didn't want that situation. I mean, I was a young man. I just, I needed to be able to protect myself and my freedom as well. So, and my reputation. So, you know, there are things you have to consider as a potential stepfather. You know, it's not as easy as people think. You know,
No.
because again, even though I'm much older now and we've been in each other's lives for almost 30 years, you know, I'm still careful about certain situations, right? I
Mhm.
remember you know, because of the difference in our ages, we're only about 16 years apart. Uh, we were rarely ever together, just she and I, because people look at you funny.
Mhm.
You know, people see a man walking hand in hand with a little girl, and they don't know the relationship. You know, they could think I'm a predator, they could think I'm a molester, they could, you know, but that's my stepdaughter. And so I saw people looking at me. I saw the stares I got, and it was uncomfortable. And so, you know, at that point, I knew that, you know, for me, it was best that we not be in that situation. You know, so most of the time, if my daughter was there, my wife was also there. You know, my girlfriend at the time, but you know, my wife was also there because it just made it easier to for people to kind of figure out what the situation was. You know, and in this age of in this time of um, predators, sexual predators, sex trafficking, and all that. You have to be careful about all those things, right? And I was very careful about those things. I never want to be, scrutinized or viewed as someone who was doing something illegal or improper or immoral. So yeah, I was very careful about everything I did, and to a certain degree, I am still careful about things because I just don't ever want that scrutiny. And even now, my daughter lives here in the home with us. Uh, you know, I don't walk around, half dressed. She doesn't either. My wife does whatever she wants, but my daughter and I don't do that. Out of respect. We don't, and I actually had to enforce that. That was a rule that I had to enforce. That hey, I'm not going to walk around this way, so you shouldn't either, right? And I think it's just respectful and proper. You know that even though we've been around each other for 30 years, we still have certain boundaries that we don't cross in our relationship. So that
Okay,
was a long-winded answer, but
so
there we go.
Bridges, I know you joined the panel. You didn't get a chance to answer the questions that are on the first slide. I want you to answer these questions again. The fourth one, what do men want from women? You can just answer from your own perspective, since I know I kind of dropped the ball on that question.
Sure, gotcha. So life as a black man. Life as a black man has been interesting for me. Um, I grew up. I was raised by two parents who both grew up very poor, but in different circumstances. My dad grew up poor in the country, and my mom grew up poor in the projects in the city. And so they never had high expectations for their lives, but they did want more from my brother and I. And so we grew up in a modest working class neighborhood. Um, it was a mostly black neighborhood, so I grew up in a black area. High school in my area was all black, but I was a good student coming up through elementary school, and my teachers encouraged me not to go to the school in my neighborhood because it was all black and it wasn't the best school. They wanted the best opportunities for me, and they wanted me to be challenged. So they encouraged me to join the minority to majority program, which is called the MTM program, which is basically busing. I was bused every morning from my area of Atlanta to another part of northern Atlanta. And, I went to school with white kids and Hispanic kids and Asian kids. And, I learned, I was challenged. I was challenged to the degree that I needed to be challenged to become the person that I am today. It was a bittersweet experience because on the one hand, I did get to learn things at a pace and at a rate that I needed to as someone who was pretty sharp kid, but I also experienced the dark side of being an African American in a formerly all white school. I did experience racism. I did experience people who expected less of me and didn't think I was capable or qualified to do things just because I was black. You know, I went through all of that, and my school was integrated probably about 7 or 8 years before I joined, before I started there. And even though it was integrated from the outside looking in, it was integrated, but from the inside, walking around the halls, it was very segregated. So everybody not pretty much hung out with their group, their demographic group, their racial group. You have Asians in one area, whites in one area, blacks in one area. So we all kind of stayed separate unless we had classes together. And unfortunately, the way the classes were structured at this school, most of the general and remedial classes were filled with blacks. That's where they put most of the black kids that came into the school. And then a handful of blacks were in the advanced classes. And I was one that kind of forced my way into the advanced classes. But being in that environment actually prepared me for what I was to experience in college, and also once I started in the working world. I've worked in IT for over 30 years, and even though I was very well educated, very well spoken, articulate, and all those things, working in the industry that I worked in the IT industry, I was always, I felt like I was always judged differently, and the expectations for my performance were different, right? I felt uncomfortable many times speaking in public, because I was worried that I would say something or do something that people thought was characteristics of the fact that I'm a black man, right? I wasn't I was always proud. I've always been proud of being a black man, but I never want to do anything to fit the stereotype of what my audience or the people who were listening to me thought a black man. So every day I walked around trying, kind of uh, not really pretending to be somebody else because I was still that person, but I was very careful of what I showed people because people were very judgmental. People are very judgmental. And anything that I did that looked, that would make me look like I was, um, you know, uneducated, violent, dangerous, all the stereotypes that other groups think of black people, I tried to suppress all of those things. They were in me because of where I came from, because of where I was raised. I was raised in the hood, but I knew that I had to become a chameleon. I had to be able to turn that on and off. Now we call it code switching. I had to code switch all the time because I worked in a white collar environment. But when I came home, I'm back in the hood. I'm back with my family. I'm spending time with the people I love, and I am who I am. Right. I didn't have to change my presentation. You know, I don't have to do that when I'm at home, but I definitely have to do that, when I'm at work. So, and like I said, even though I'm, well educated, I'm fairly clean cut. I'm professional. I present myself professionally. Being a black man in this country that doesn't mean that you'll get an easier ride.
Hey,
They
building.
still
I got a question for you. How do you feel
sure.
like the situation you're describing? What about coming from other black men, not just of other races? Do you still feel like some of these stereotypes or prejudice that you were worried about encountering, that those same situations arose with black men as well, or black women?
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you restate your question just so that I make sure I answer it the right way?
Yeah, so I was just asking, like, some of the things that you said, switching codes, just kind of being mindful of your crowd, how you're speaking. What has been your, I guess, what has been the situation for you when you were interacting in a corporate environment with your own black women, black men?
That's a great question. So I'll tell you, most of my experiences in IT have been around white people and Indians, right? Because obviously Indians are they're almost predominant now in IT. But whenever I would see a black person in the room or in the space that I was in, we'd always make kind of subtle eye contact and almost like, hey man, I'm going to catch you in a few minutes. We're kind of like unspoken language. We would have ways to communicate because I want to connect with that person because that was probably the only person that I felt that I could connect to in a way that I didn't have to have my guard up, right? And inevitably it happened. We'd find each other at some point in the day or at some point, during that period when we worked together, and we connect. We talk. We let our hair down. We talk about our personal experiences. I mean, it was refreshing. As a matter of fact, our moderator, he and I worked together on a project, and that project actually had more African Americans. Not
Right.
significantly more, but we worked together, and he and I, we were actually on the same team, which was an oddity for me because most of the time it wasn't like that. It was me and a bunch of white guys or a bunch of Indians and white guys. So for me to have another black man that I could speak to, that I could pull to the side and we can have a talk and we can just let our guard down, and just relax for a while, for a moment. Oh, that was, I appreciated having my friend around. I appreciated having the Maroon Tiger around because he was that outlet for me if I ever needed to vent, if I ever needed to, take my guard off, take my shield off, and just kind of relax for a little bit. He was there. Now, I'll be honest, we didn't do that often just because of the circumstances with work, and we were always really busy. But I knew that if I needed to have a conversation with somebody that I felt like I could trust, he was that guy, right? And there were a couple of other black guys around that were the same way. And to me that was important because I think we all ultimately needed the same thing. And it was important that we all found each other because we needed to have that support system, even though we were in situations and places that weren't always comfortable for us. So there's a fraternity. There's that fraternity, that black IT guy fraternity that I was a part of. That unspoken fraternity, and yeah, that's I've experienced that for over 30 years.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess to sum it up, my life as a Black man has been, I've always been a high achiever. I've always been one who strives to do the best that I can, despite my upbringing, despite the odds, despite the expectations or lack of expectations that people had on me. I've always wanted to be an example of the potential of Black man, right? And I've always realized the importance of my role in being that guy, right? Not being that typical guy, because I've got cousins, nephews, friends, people that were in my same age group that watched me that I had no idea were watching me, just kind of studying me. I had friends that were like no more than 4 or 5 years younger than me that would tell me, "Man, I've been watching you for a long time, and I appreciate how you handle yourself." I'm like, "Yeah, why are you looking up to me? Like, why are you saying that about me?" But they were looking for someone who was different, someone who was cut from a different mold than what they were used to seeing. And I never turned my back on anybody. I never tooted my nose at anybody. Who was a different, who fit that mold, because that was who I am. That's a part of it. That's one of the skins that I wear is that guy, right? I blend in wherever I go, so I don't toot my nose up to anybody like that. But I also understand the importance of being an alternative example for kids to see and for people to follow, because unfortunately we don't always have there aren't as many of us that are willing to be that guy. Remember, back in the day, Charles Barkley says, "I'm not a role model," right? And he's one of the richest people in the world, Black man who made it from Alabama. But he says, "I'm not a role model. Your parents should be the role model." I get why he said it, but that's an indication that not everybody's willing to take that responsibility. And I've always been willing to take that responsibility, just because I've always been that guy.
Builder, can I ask you a question? And
Absolutely.
I want to ask everybody, just for my information, so that I'm not so much in the dark, and maybe the listeners won't be either. Can we all at least state our age or age-ish? You can lie by a year or two over or under. You know what I'm saying? So that
Yeah, for sure.
so when we're talking, people kind of understand. I'll just state for a fact I'm 60, or will be in a couple of weeks. So I'm just gonna claim 60.
Sure, absolutely. I'm very proud of my 52 years, because I have a lot of friends that didn't make 18.
How
So
many? How old are you?
50. I'm 52.
Oh, okay, excellent. Congratulations, sir.
52. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
OB,
I'm
I just want
38.
38. Chris.
I'm 42 this year.
Okay, all right. So it get. I think hopefully it gives the listeners and all of us a reference point when we're talking. But go ahead. I just wanted to. I just wanted that information. That's all.
Sure.
I do
Sure.
think it helps. And it's not to say that if you were 25, it would make your words any less impactful, because it wouldn't. But then it also adds a certain thing when people say a much older person. We're not
Yeah.
going to act like age and wisdom don't matter, because
Yeah.
I always tell you, wisdom is just experience.
Well, Rico, that's a good segue, because that's the reason why I wanted Builder Bridges on this panel, is like, and you and OB, because you and Builder Bridges specifically are a little bit older than OB and I, and you can speak to stuff that we didn't get to see. So I wanted
Yeah.
people, and y'all both have kids, so y'all
Yeah.
bring that element too.
I'll tell you. Let me explain my name there, Builder of Bridges. I chose that name very specifically because one of the things that I believe in is building bridges between older generations of our people and the younger generations. I like to think of myself as a conduit between those, right? I like to bring my grandfathers and my uncles into conversations with my nephews and younger people. And I think as Black men, we have to look for opportunities to build that bridge more than we do, because there's so much history, so much knowledge. There's a wealth of information that we can learn from older generations that, unfortunately, that aren't being passed down like they used to be back in the day, right? Back in the day, kids used to go and hang out. Like I used to hang out with my granddad, and we sit and talk for hours. I don't know that people are having those conversations. The kids are having those conversations, right? And I would love to be a builder of that bridge between those two generations, the generation before me and the generation after me, generations after me. So that's why I chose that name, Builder of Bridges. And I like what you're doing with this panel, Chris, because I think it is one of the goals I like to achieve in my life, is to help to connect people together of different generations so that we can learn from each other and we can grow and build with each other.
Yeah, that was exactly the motivation. And I'm going to let you get back to answering the questions. But that was exactly the motivation for creating this panel. We did like a women's panel about 3 weeks ago. Is I see today with social media, there's a growing gap between men and women. There's a growing gap between where men want to be and where they're at in a lot of cases. And I think, like you said, they're missing that elder statesman. They're missing the being held accountable from their friends, from other. They're missing maybe the father figure. And I'm like, I want my inspiration for this was like, let's elevate the conversation of as men, and then help inspire other men to realize, listen, fighting women and disparaging women, that's not what a mature man does. I want to show people what does maturity look like. That's actually a question I want to segue to in another section, but I want you to, continue going back answering your questions.
Sure. Let me hit the second bullet, the pressure of being a Black man. I'm sure that many of us have had the experiences that I've had as a Black man, walking into a grocery store, walking into a department store, being followed, walking down the street in a neighborhood that's, a nicer neighborhood, and having people look at you funny and kind of wonder why you're there. There's been, a lot of things that have happened in recent history to people who have been in that situation, so, I think that, those are kind of common experiences that I think many of us have had. And I'll tell you, one of the things that's happened to me, and I'll give you guys a couple of stories from my life in IT and the pressure of being a Black man in IT. I did a project for a company that was based in the Midwest. And this was at the time when we actually had to wear shirt and ties to work, right? So it wasn't casual. It was, shirt and ties. And so I had a shirt and tie on, and I'm in a 3-story building, and I'm going down the stairs to go get lunch, because I had a meeting right after lunch. So I get on the elevator, I get out to the bottom floor, I start running down the stairs of this small downtown, the small town in the Midwest. Well, I'm running, to get to a restaurant, and there was an elderly white woman up ahead of me, and I didn't think anything about it. But when she heard my footsteps, or when she turned around and saw who she thought I was, she almost broke her neck crossing the street. She almost tripped and fell, just trying
The
to
way
hobble
we're
across the
doing
street.
it is Rebecca's going next week, then I go the week after, and then Jimena's going the
Hello?
week after. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hello? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me shut up. I was supposed to be on mute.
All good. All good. So like I said, I was, I saw her, and I wasn't right behind her. I was kind of off to her left, but back behind her. But she saw me running, and she was immediately, in fear. And right. So I had to realize, oh, wait a minute. Even though I've got a shirt and tie on, I'm still a Black man running down the street behind a white woman. Right. So I better, be a little bit more cautious, and maybe, not run right behind her, not run past her. So anyhow, that happened. She was crossing the street, and she finally made it over. And I didn't say anything. I didn't stop. I just kept on going. I got my lunch, and I came back. On another occasion, similar situation. I'm coming back from lunch, and again, I'm in a 3-story building, shirt and tie. I get on the elevator, and I'm walking to the elevator, and the elevator doors are about to close. So I kind of grab the elevator door so that they don't close. And there's a white woman standing there in the elevator. Well, she's got a purse under her arm, and when she sees me walk onto the elevator, she moves as far away from me as she can in the elevator, so that we're kind of diagonal across the elevator. And I kind of walk right to the back, put my back against the back wall. She clutches her purse. She kind of puts her purse, under her arm, and kind of faces the wall of the elevator. Now, mind you, we're in the corporate headquarters for a large company, but we have to badge in and out. So nobody in the building is, a stranger, is unknown. You have to badge in and out. And, it's a 3-floor building. So, I didn't think that there was a reason for her to be that alarmed. But anyhow, we're going up the elevator, and I'm quiet. I'm standing there quiet as a church mouse. I didn't want to breathe